Turns out some of our elite universities are harboring some of the globe's most powerful communists. Now, we've all heard about President Trump talking about whether or not international students can come to Harvard. Harvard is kind of the pinnacle of this, but at the same time, it's happening in a bunch of different places. Harvard and other elite institutions love foreign exchange students, primarily, I think, because they pay the full freight. I don't know anybody anywhere who hasn't gotten some sort of scholarship to whatever school they're going to. And maybe it's little, maybe it's small, maybe it's kind of insignificant. But at the same time, even like state schools, you get in-state tuition versus out-of-state tuition, and then there's international tuition. International students are the only ones that pay the full freight. So colleges and universities love to have them. Well, it turns out some of our best schools have been educating some of the worst people on the planet, or at least people who work for the worst governments on the planet. Explicitly in this article from the Wall Street Journal, the Chinese Communist Party, Harvard, is favored by the communist elites over really all of the other schools. Party officials, including Xi's daughter, so President Xi's, first of all, sidebar, why do we call them president? They're not the president in the same way that we elect presidents. He's the head of the Politburo, which is installed by the Communist Party and doesn't really allow for the people of China to make any sort of decisions on their own autonomy, all that sort of stuff. But I guess for simplicity, we'll continue calling Xi the president as if he was elected, which is stupid, of China. Even Xi's daughter went to Harvard in like the 2010 era, I believe, before he was like the grand poobah, the grand poobah of the Chinese Communist Party. His daughter was going to Harvard, and then she graduated after Xi took power. Other alumni include the former vice president and Chinese leader Xi's top negotiator with the Trump first administration in trade talks. In other words, the guy who's negotiating with the United States and the commies, between the commies, for the commies with the United States, was a graduate of one of the programs. This is, I think, from News Nation. The report names several high-ranking party figures who also studied at Harvard, including former vice president, yada, 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 who attended the public policy school in 2002, a retired vice premier who received a master's from Harvard in public administration in 1995, and a current party member who took part in a short-term Harvard program in 1999. When people are saying it is xenophobic or racist or whatever term that people are using nowadays, when someone says, hey, maybe we shouldn't let all of the Chinese communist spies into our universities, know that at the top levels of our biggest adversary, and I mean that economically, population-wise, our biggest foe on the planet is sending people to our elite universities. I think we might want to do something about that. I feel like that's not an unreasonable thing to say, hey, don't do that. That's not good, or we're not going to let you continue doing that. And the people that say, well, it's racist to do that, maybe it's countryist. Was it nationalist? Which I've never understood that term. Why is nationalism a bad thing? I want the United States to exceed over all of the other nation states. Somebody would call me a nationalist. I think I would be called a brown nationalist. Is that worse or is that better? Regardless, the Chi-Coms are sending their students to our universities, and then those students are growing up to become leaders of our biggest adversary. It seems problematic.